Welcome to A Toast to Truth. This is where I share the mental, financial, and emotional frustrations of being an entrepreneur. Remember, in this season, we're trying to shy away from the frustrations. We want to get little bit more into the positive, but we'll see. Anyway, this is season 9, episode 6, Blooming Beyond That Burnout. And my guest co host is Stephanie Davis. She will be a speaker at the Get Me Paid Influencer Bootcamp, and she's also a therapist. So, you guys know I've shared my depression story over the years. I'm not ashamed of it. And to finally be able to have an actual therapist on as we talk about something that a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of influencers deal with is burnout. And so, Stephanie, I don't know if we met in person just yet. We kind of know a lot of the same people. We're
Yeah.
connected online, but I usually remember when I meet someone in person, so I don't think.
We haven't real life met.
Okay, that's
I'm
it.
ready for it, but we haven't real life met.
So we have been virtually connected for some time, and I've just watched her over the years. And I like she does a lot of stuff with teenage girls in particular. And so, me being someone who suffered from depression since I was 14 and did not know until I was 30, but um, everybody just thought I was a sad child, not knowing that there was something actually a little bit more than just, regular teen sadness. And so I definitely can't wait to hop into this conversation because I know, entrepreneurs deal with burnout, but you may also have a kid who is showing some type of signs, and you may want to be able to connect with someone who could give you some help, or just someone you can let your child speak to so that they can get the help. And we may bring up, how I was as a teenager. Like I said, I have no shame. I walk into glass doors. I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so this week's question is, what caused your burnout? So I'm going to let Stephanie share if she's ever been burnt out, because I know therapists have a very high stress job, and I know therapists, a lot of people I don't know why they don't realize it or recognize it, but therapists, you get stressed, you get burnt out. There's a lot of emotions that you deal with because you can't share
Right.
what your clients are sharing with you. So it's like, how do you deal with all that? So I'll let Stephanie answer first. What caused your burnout, if you've ever had any?
Okay. I have. So you were mentioning about therapists. So there's two parts to it. So there's burnout and then there's compassion fatigue. So a lot of therapists are people who are in professions of service. Sometimes you'll get compassion fatigue also because you are giving so much of yourself or you're taking on such an empathetic role to where you start to become tired, but you're not tired necessarily because of like a physical burnout. You're tired because you've given so much emotionally to a person and you haven't recharged. And then burnout is you could be physically, emotionally burnout. It's just like you're just tapped out and you don't have any more to give. I experienced burnout a few times, actually. The most recent time was when I became, if we call it like the sandwich generation. That's
Oh,
where,
yeah.
yeah, I remember posting that somewhere. So my burnout happened during that time where my two brothers had passed away. So I was trying to, deal with that as well. I had just full-fledged opened up Hard Work Trending, which is the counseling consulting practice. I left education, and after 13 years, and it was kind of like, woohoo, entrepreneur, I got this. And then
Right?
life
You
started happening.
so excited, and then life. Yep.
Yes, and you're like, whoop, whoop, okay, I'm about to walk out on faith. And my burnout came when my mom had a stroke. I ended up having to, I thought that I was just going to pour everything into, okay, focusing on me and my child, kind of recouping from my brother's passing away. And it was like just when I had got a grip on it and like business was flowing, kind of. And I had a therapist, you know, to deal with my own personal issues. That's one of the things that they always tell us or highly recommend, that a therapist has a therapist. You're right, because we're kind of like, we work for the FBI kind of sort of, where we
Yeah.
hold a lot in, and it's difficult to tell people because they'll ask, so what did you do today? Just work with some people, you know.
Like a spy.
Like, yeah. And so I mean, you can't say names. There's so many like HIPAA laws. You got, and Houston is big, but it's so small. So you really have to be careful with what you say. You can't even really share different, you know, notes, or it might be something interesting to you that you can't share. And consulting and having a therapist is important for that. So my burnout came when I had to become a caregiver for my mom and my stepdad, because after my brother passed away, like 6 months after that, my mom had a stroke. And from there, it was just like I sold my house. My daughter and I moved in with my mom and my stepdad, which is actually where I am now. So I had to make like a whole home office and such, um, for those days where I'm here and working. So that's when my burnout came. Yeah, and that was a
That's a
year
lot.
ago. Yeah, it was a year and a half ago. So
Because
unblocking me.
that's a lot, because last year I had about 13 family members pass away, from cousins, second cousins, aunts, and, you know, both of my parents lost a sibling last year.
Right.
And so, people were like, how did you do that? I mean, I knew some of the relatives, like very, very close, and then I didn't know some of the relatives, but it still takes a toll because someone else you're connected to
Right.
is grieving from that, and my grandfather lost a sister. So I do understand
And that's
loss.
kind of where that compassion fatigue kicks in, when it's not necessarily you. Sometimes it could be an
Yes.
extension of what's pulling on you that you have to
Yes.
check and balance too.
And I'm glad you brought up compassion fatigue. I've heard of it, but no one's had, I've never really delved into research on it and things like that. Because I'm one of those rabbit hole researchers. Like if there's a topic of interest, I'm all for it and researching. But um, if you listen to this podcast over the years, I've shared several burnout stories. My most recent was last year. In addition to the family members passing away, I was forced to retire from education. I taught in adult education, and because some man in DC decides he doesn't like immigrants, he started cutting funding. And I taught English as a second language to refugees. So, something I loved that job. Like I didn't really
Yeah.
like any job I've ever had. So to not have a job that you actually loved, and I was making good money from it. I literally was in the classroom and I just collapsed. I collapsed and landed on the floor. And so between the family passing, the stress of not knowing if I was going to have a job, things happening with a group I was managing, people expected me to come and do things for them, but then when I asked for
Yeah.
help, they want to get upset and say I was being selfish. And then taking care of other people, and then the stress of, oh gosh, I don't have a job. Even though I had a blog, I had spent so much time with the group that I wasn't focused on my blog. So now I had to figure out how I was going to make money. So it just, whoop, whoop, whoop,
Right.
boom. And there I was on the
All
floor in
like
the classroom.
all the dominoes just started.
Yes. And so, um, but I still had to keep going. I still had to,
Right.
I mean, I lost my voice. I couldn't even speak. Like I had to email um, to my supervisor because while I was down, they kept trying to call, and I was like, I can't speak. Like it was horrible. But that was a wake up call that I didn't see until months later.
Yeah. And that
And
happened to me in 2005. I
mhm.
had strained vocal cords. That was actually my first year teaching, and I had ninth grade. I had a young daughter.
Oh Lord.
I, yeah, and I think the most painful part was not being able to read to her bedtime stories, because
Mhm.
I mean, literally, like I had no voice. And I remember when I went to the doctor, they showed me like the X-ray, and I learned a lot and how your vocal cords are like guitar strings, and they're like, "Well, yours are completely plucked out." But just the personal part of it, just dealing with my child's father being in an abusive relationship with dad. So that was my first, and that time, and that's when I started recognizing patterns in my life. And that time was when my dad passed away. So this was in 2005. And then as like you're saying, sometimes you don't recognize things until like you were talking about your depression. It
Until
was
it's too
something
late.
you battle with. Well,
Mhm.
you battle with it at a young age and you can't name it or conceptualize it. And then when you get older, you start looking back and recognizing the patterns. That's why I love what I do. But you just will start sitting down and
Mhm.
recognizing the patterns and like, dang, I've been here before. So 9 times out of 10, we know this might potentially happen again. Or if it doesn't, what skills can we take away from that? Like you were talking about, when you got older, then you were able to call it, what it was, and be able to say, okay, if this is happening to me, or if it happens to someone else, I can say, hey, this is what you're experiencing. This is how we're gonna work through it.
Yeah, because I'm also an introvert, and so people think that being an
Mhm.
introvert means shy, and I was like, I'm not shy. Like, if you follow me online, I'm not shy at all. I just don't like big groups of people. I'm like, there's different
Yeah.
types of introverts. I'm,
I'm like that too, though,
you
to
know,
be honest.
oh, an introvert.
Yeah, I'm very
Yeah.
selective with who I align myself with.
Mhm.
And in the past, and maybe you've experienced this too, like when you're trying to find your footing, especially with entrepreneurship and then being in education, sometimes you're pushed at the forefront of things, and you kind of find yourself in these situations, and you're trying to find yourself in the middle of what's happening, and like, okay,
Mhm.
is this me? And then I gotta put on this hat and switch it up, kind of push out of the comfort zone. And then when it's over, you go back and you recharge back to yourself and to like your quiet space.
Yeah, we were talking about that in episode 2 with Danica. She's my life coach of like the hustle. So
Yeah.
that's sounds like what people do. You do something, then you go recharge, and it's like, do you ever take time to think about the patterns? And I did start noticing patterns, and I also noticed it's around the same time of the year when things fall apart in my life, and it's
Mhm.
March, late February through like the end of March. I don't know what that time means. But in school, I play basketball and ran track. So about that time was when I was also doing both basketball and track at the same time. And so it was for me because I took AP classes, I took college classes my junior and senior year of high school, and then I played sports year round. So during that time, I would always get sick
Mm.
every year. I would get sick at that same time, like physically sick. And so when I was looking at the patterns over the years, because this year, 2019, something was happening in March, and I was like, wait a minute, like, no, I'm gonna have a good
Yeah.
year. And then I realized, and I started looking at every major time I had burnout, every major time I've had a crisis, it always began late February through March. And I said, okay, you know what? I said, no, this is what's not going to happen this year.
Yeah. And that's right, like recognizing and breaking the cycles. And that's why I try to teach people with mental health education and just with therapy. And I know we'll probably get into that later. Like people kind of had this mindset of what therapy looks like or what it isn't. It's just really helping you go back and kind of life map where you're at, and then giving you the clinical skills to break forward. If it's depression, if it's
Mhm.
anxiety, or if it's something that you struggle with, but it is really helping you uh, have ownership of it, but
Mhm.
also have an understanding of it and give you a toolkit so that when, like you said, when those seasons in our lives come, not necessarily worldly seasons, but when our seasons in our life, I call them life cycles. But when those life cycles start coming, you can say, like you said, wait a minute, usually I know March gonna hit, so
Yeah.
let me ground myself. Even like when we talk about seasons in life, we know that this is tornado season. We're going to start preparing. Not that we anticipate it actually happening to us, but you know
Prevention.
that it's a pattern. Yeah. So
Mhm.
um, that's important to have the preventative tools.
Yeah, because this year, I don't know, because I felt like I hadn't heard God in a really long time. But for this year, I heard sabbatical, and I had heard of sabbaticals, and I've read about them, but this is my sabbatical year. But it's not like a typical sabbatical year where I'm not working.
Yeah.
But I said I was taking a break from everybody else's BS. Like that's my sabbatical year.
Yeah.
And so it was a challenge in the beginning because I'm used to solving problems, even if it's not my own, because I'm like, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to deal with it. Let me just solve it and
Right.
move on. But I've had to really learn to say no. And I don't have a problem saying no, but saying no to things I would have liked to do. Like I didn't attend a few friends' weddings this year, you know. I didn't go to a few friends' other celebrations. And not that I didn't want to celebrate with them, but I realized my body is still recovering
Right.
from everything that happened last year. I didn't realize until I sat myself down how tired my body is. Sometimes I can't even move. And I'm like, I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it was God, like, you need to sit down. You need to rest because you've done a lot. And a lot of stuff you shouldn't have done, but you did it. So your body needs
Yeah.
to recuperate and to recover. And so I'm like, okay, okay. For me, that is one way that I am recovering from the burnout is really letting go of a lot of things. I've been doing a lot of internal work. It's not for the faint at heart.
I'm proud of you.
I've had to really deal with grace, mercy, and forgiveness for others because I'm hard on myself. So I treat other people how I treat myself. And I learned that everybody's not as strong as I am when it comes to, certain things. I remember, and this is a little caveat, y'all know I go off on tangents. I was working this one conference, and the producer of the conference, she was stressed out. There was a lot going on. And I asked a question and she kind of blew up and I didn't think anything of it. I went and figured it out and solved it and stuff like that. And the next day she apologized and I had totally forgot, that she blew up and she was like, most people would have gotten upset. They would have quit. They would have left,
Yeah.
like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, we have a job to do. We have hundreds of people in this hotel for this event. We don't have, like, I don't
Yeah.
have.
It's showtime.
Yes, I was like, I don't have
That's
time to
gone.
be offended. And I wasn't like, I needed to figure it out. Okay, let me figure it out. I did. We got it done. And so,
Yeah.
so I'm saying all that to say that this year I realized that I can't be the problem solver for other people, and I can't treat other people like I treat myself because I realized I wasn't treating myself very kind. I was
Yeah.
always do this, do this, do this, and move, 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 go, go, go. And it just was like, ooh, now that I'm sitting down, I was like, I have done a lot. I may need to,
Yeah.
reevaluate how I want to move. I'm 35 now. I know some people don't like to share their age. I didn't think I was going to see this age, honestly, because I was so unhappy growing up. I didn't think I was going to go to college. I went to college. I didn't think I was going to graduate. My whole family was happy I graduated. Now,
And
mind
you see those patterns
you,
and you jumping over the hurdles.
yeah. So, I mean, I was a straight A student. Like I said, I took AP honors classes, college classes, but my whole family knew I didn't want to go to college. But I
Right.
went. Y'all can listen to that episode when my mom was on, and we talked a little bit about how I ended up in college. Um, but it was a lot of things I just never thought I was going to do because I never thought I was going to make it. So
Yeah.
the sheer fact that I am 35, um, I'm happy about that, and I want to live. So that meant I had to do all that work, and that meant I had to stop doing other things in order to have that time to really do the inner work. This year, I decided to read the Bible, the whole Bible in 1 year. I think I'm like on week 33 or something like that. So it's,
Good.
yes, that's a whole nother episode of a podcast.
I'm happy for you. And I always tell people to celebrate the wins and begin again, because you really have to shift the way that you think of your mistakes, because some of your
Mhm.
mistakes are not really always your own. It's what you've been taught, and we can talk about that. But
Yeah.
the expectations of other people, subliminal programming. And so a lot of the burdens, and I remember this quote a long time ago, a lot of the burdens that we carry aren't ours. And so when we go back and, like you said, do the inner work or do the hard work within ourselves, we really start to separate and realize, okay, this is the part that I'm really responsible for. These other things, and I had to do that because I had so much going on. And so it got to a place where I couldn't, and we were talking about entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
doing school counseling. I mean, I was okay, had the typical house, car, whatever. I had the
Yeah.
guest bedroom where people could stay if they were down on their luck. And it was
Well,
like,
you nicer than me. I'm like,
I
I was
know,
like, I don't
I
even
was
have
always
furniture
the
for you
go-to
to sit on.
person.
No, because
Yeah,
people
in
would
my
come over.
family, yeah. And that's where the compassion fatigue came from.
Mhm.
So the compassion fatigue was, I'm giving and I'm giving, but nobody is giving back to me. And it's like,
Yeah.
I was okay, but at some point, like you were saying, if we're not gonna refill, I'm gonna have to turn my faucet off so that I can replenish myself
Yeah.
if no one's gonna pour into it. And so that's really kind of where, and it wasn't like an angry thing, because people tend to think, oh, well, I guess they got an attitude because I asked for something.
Mhm.
And for me, like, I had to start speaking up to say, hey, listen, y'all see, I got a lot on my plate. And people, not to say this in a mean way, people are consumed with what they need at that moment.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, well, I know Stephanie gonna give it to me. I know that, she's giving it to me before. She's in a good place. And people also have this assumption, because I only have one child, that we just don't have nothing else to do with our money or our
Oh,
time. So I
well,
had to nip that in the bud.
think of having no children, and people just think you are like available for every whim and need and everything. And I'm just like, I remember I had one aunt who volunteered me to take care of an uncle who had surgery. I go, excuse you. Uh-uh.
Right.
She was like, well, you're not married, you don't have kids. It took everything in me not to cuss her out.
And people will do that. And so that's why it was so important to avoid burnout,
Mm-hmm.
to start setting those boundaries, to speak up, to say, hey, this is what I'm really responsible for, or this is how much energy I can give to a situation. And so I started teaching self-care classes in the extension of therapy. So this was something totally separate, just to help women who were experiencing burnout. And compassion fatigue, and they were wondering why they had all this anxiety, why they were having trouble with dating, or just building relationships with their kids. And that started because everybody is overwhelmed, but you got to figure out, what are you putting on your plate. Like, I mean, you could be overwhelmed with a lot of different things, but would you be okay if you took them off? Like, would you be okay if we didn't do this today? And I started having those conversations with my daughter, like, even with course scheduling, like, okay, this is your junior year. Yeah, you want to play volleyball, but at this point, you're probably not going to get a scholarship. So that's going to be for fun. Let's look at what we're doing here. And so teaching that to where people aren't getting this extra anxiety, or creating these, I want to say, false illnesses, but sometimes the things that we keep piling on, either by society or family's perception, aren't really us. Like we could be okay sitting at home watching TV.
Well, I know I am. Y'all know I love me some Netflix.
Yeah. And it was so great because this was the first time in a long time that I actually watched TV and could really pay attention to it. Usually I would just watch it because
It
I
was
wanted
on.
to be able to, yeah, it would be watching me, but I would be
Uh,
working and then I would look up every now and then. But it was more so for conversation, just to
okay.
be kind of on the up and up. If I
Like
was
the water cooler. Yep.
yeah, if I was sitting in a meeting or like one of the kids would come to therapy and be like, Miss, did you see Empire? I'm like, no.
Well, I would be like, nah, because that show is never
Yeah,
mind.
and I would ask my daughter, like sometimes I'll ask her questions like, hey, I really was probably asleep when that came on. Can you give me like two more happened? Because like just to be able to build that relationship with kids and then
Yeah.
say, okay, well, let's talk about Empire a little bit. Is that something that we're going after? Like, is that like a life goal? Like what attracts you to so, using it as a teachable moment. But yeah, I definitely feel more connected to myself and like you're saying, connected to God. I reread
Yeah.
the Bible also. I'm not as far as you are, but I've started doing like audio,
I did
different
that last year.
podcasts. Yeah, because I'm the type of person I'll sleep, but I'll still be listening to it kind of subconsciously. And so that helps me out a lot, even when I'm in a space where I can't sit down and read, because a lot of times there's always things around me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I can listen to it as I'm sleeping or if I'm laying in the bed, that's helped me out. We're really just looking at where can I implement self-care in my day and teaching women and business owners how to do that. Because you're right, as entrepreneurs, we're making a mind shift also. Not only are we financially, most of us, if we have things happen, we're at this place like we go whoop and whoop.
Yeah. And to speak to the financial part, a lot of times, a lot of the women, especially the women who listen to this podcast, we are not just taking care of just ourselves or our
Right.
households. We're also, like you were taking care of your parents and your daughter. A lot of people are I know I don't just pay for myself with certain things. So it does kind of come overwhelming because you're just sitting
Yeah.
there like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I have to do this, but I also have to do this for the business, and I have to do this. And you're just sitting there like, some got to give,
Right.
like so something has to give. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take a quick sip, and then we're gonna come back because I know Stephanie also does journals, and I want to talk a little bit about journaling. And then
Okay.
I also want to talk a little bit more of what she mentioned about self-care because I did do an episode called Self-Care Will Not Save You. Because y'all know how I am about these trends. So we're going to take a quick sip and then
Right.
we'll be right back.
Houston Catering Concepts is a full-service catering company in Houston, Texas. They are looking forward to catering your next event or family celebration. You can choose from Mexican, I love Mexican, Persian, barbecue, and more. Oh, and they are the food sponsor for Get Me Paid Influencer Bootcamp. Contact them today by phone 832-594-7296 or email orders with an S at houstoncatering.com. Mark your calendars. September 19th is the Get Me Paid Influencer Bootcamp. It's a one-day conference helping you understand the operational side of being an influencer so you make more money. Throughout the day, you'll learn different strategies you can add to your action plan. And that action plan is what you will implement when you leave. Make sure you go to gum.co/getmepaid19 to get your ticket today. No matter what, the freedom of waking up and not stressing out about money, paying your bills, getting things done, especially for your blog, is indescribable. And we want you to have that feeling too. So make sure you go to gum.co/getmepaid19 to get your ticket.
Okay, we're back. And what we're going to do for the second half, we want to talk, like I said, about the self care classes that Stephanie teaches, but I know she also does journaling. And I created a journaling business that you all know failed miserably. It didn't do very well. However, it did save a life. I'm very happy about that. It helped one lady get out of a bad marriage, and she saved her life, and she's thriving now, and I can't wait to see what she does with her own life. But as I was building that business, I didn't realize that it was equipping me with the skills that I'm using now in my recovery from what happened last year. So, Stephanie, how do you either incorporate, use, or suggest that people do journaling as a way to really kind of help them through problems that they're facing?
So I actually have it, and so I'll show it to you, even though everybody can't see it. So for me, I use intentional journaling, and I teach intentional journaling. So that is kind of giving a comprehensive view of what journaling is, because a lot of people think it's just writing down feelings or just different ideas, but it's really more the strategic part in saying, okay, what am I writing for? What are my goals? So do I need help getting organized? What's going to reduce anxiety for me? And so I know we're going to talk about self-care, but a lot of self-care is establishing boundaries. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
also organizing and allocating. And so that's what I do. So we don't get all fancy smancy. There are people who like to decorate their journals, but we just get a simple composition notebook. And so we look at some areas that we want to strengthen in our lives. And so you start your table of contents off on your first page, and you always want to keep it open, because as you start to put information into it, this was one that we started at the beginning of the year. I have my other one, but it's full project. But it's actually in a room. But so you can be as creative as you want. So here we talked about what gifts that we want to give to ourselves, and this is always like our reminder page. So setting the objective. So for me, and then we charted at the bottom, like say we were keeping a track of our calendar. So for me, I wanted more peace in my life because of everything that happened. And so it makes you think, okay, what does peace look like in my life? So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm journaling, I am also thinking of ways to discover peace within myself. So that could be reading the Bible. Like you said, that could be just going out and sitting outside on the porch, watching the dog. And so then I would chart how many times I'm doing this. So either you can do it in written form, or some people like to do charts and graphs. So journaling doesn't necessarily have to be writing.
For
Now,
all
my
those people who don't like writing, because I heard that a lot, I'm
the
not good at it. I don't like it. Well, Stephanie is
differentiated
giving you an
instructions.
alternative here, okay?
Yes. Also, journaling could be list or bulleting. This was always a favorite one, kind of like your do done list. So for those people who struggle with completing tasks, being intentional is actually taking the time to write it down. And so you would put the date, that what you need to do, and then you don't move it over until you've actually done it. And so if it takes you 10 days to get to this task, it keeps going down the list. And so what that is saying for you is we need to figure out, because we're being intentional with whatever our goal is that we jotted down as far as journaling, why haven't you gotten it done? Is it because we're no longer interested? And that's okay. Just take it off. Is it
That's
something
something
that
I do struggle with. Like, I, if I start something, I feel I have to finish it. Because I feel
right?
if I don't finish it, then, that's just a horrible thing. But my pastor was saying that some things aren't meant to be finished, or they're not meant to be finished by you.
Right.
That was a hard pill to swallow, because I felt personally you were a flake if you didn't finish something. But I am learning that you don't have to see everything from A to Z, from start to
Right.
finish.
So on this list, that's good because then you can have that realization point. Maybe
Mhm.
that it wasn't of necessity like you thought it was. So when we have our groups or when we talk about it and we say, okay, it looks like this is still kind of hanging on. Is this something that you honestly want to do, or is this something that someone's making you do? Like, why is it still there but it's
Mm.
not getting done? So I just think the visual component of having a journal this way helps. And this is the favorite one, and I'm not going to take a lot of time. Post-its. So we
I love
operate.
Post-its.
So we operate in four squares. Um, and you can color code, but like I said, we just kind of work through different ones, and then you make it your own. So we operate in the four squares. You can add a fifth one if you want to. So your four squares are your components of your life or things that you need to work on. So for example, if this is an easy way to journal or capture a shopping list. So say for example, instead of just writing down a full list of stuff, it also helps you with your coupons because you're able to put them in different areas.
Mhm.
Some people tape them on there, they have the paper ones, but you can journal it this way. So we have our meats in one quadrant, produce in the other, dairy and frozen foods in one, snacks and breads here, and then this is kind of like your non-edibles that you want. So instead of just writing a full list or long drawn out things, just making it visually aesthetic will help you achieve those things more. And then this one is looking at the four areas of your life, which we practice in self-care. And so we look at areas in our lives that we feel inundated or overwhelmed, which could be family. Fitness might be one of the things. Maybe we feel guilty because we don't work out as much as we said we were at the beginning of the year. Fun or finances, because sometimes our fun trumps our finances, or vice versa. Like we're
Yeah,
so
vice versa.
tight. Yeah, we're so tight in our budget that we can't have fun. So then that creates stress too, because if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's one of the things. We need to be able to have fun, and we need to be able to have the necessities of life. So when we
One
journal
one
here,
thing I do want to interject about
oh no,
fun,
go ahead.
because I know I struggled with it because I'm like, oh, I can't afford it. But I realized that fun is different for everyone. So for me,
Right,
like at the recording of this video, I went the past weekend to go see Hobbs and Shaw. Like everybody knows that the three stars are like my ex boo, so I had to go support their new film. But I really enjoyed it, and that was fun for me. I went to the first showing, so it was like $4.99 plus tax, so it wasn't expensive. And
right,
so some people who were like, well, I can't go to Bali. Okay, but what else can you do that would be considered fun for you that is within your budget? I like to go to the funnel bar pop up. I like funnel cakes. That's
right,
fun for me. I love funnel cakes. So that was something I had to learn. I could still have fun even if my finances aren't where I could take an expensive trip to Bali. So what would be considered fun for you? That's something you need to think about. If you're taking away your own fun, find something
right.
else that you enjoy to do, you know?
Right. And so you're actually correct. So when we do intentional journaling, we say, okay, well, what does fun look like for you? Let's be intentional about it, because you're
Hmm.
right. My fun may not look like your fun. And when we're discussing this, when we have our journaling group, I might say Bali looks good to me. So what I'm doing is managing my finances so that I can have fun. So
Yeah.
it balances together. So I might have to give up some movie dates, or give up, watching movies for a while, or attending, the funnel cake fun because
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it to Bali. But I can do that because that's what I want to do.
Yes.
So
And it's not what social media is telling you to do.
right. And so that's why it's important to
Yes.
be intentional, because you're shaving off all of that. You're taking time with yourself to really look and reevaluate. And we talk about doing our hard work to reevaluate. Okay, so what does this family unit look like for me? For me, mine had to reshape because I lost my brothers, and then
Mhm.
I became like a caregiver to my parents. So my dynamic of family might look different from yours, and that's a lot of a misconception because I've worked with women in this journaling class where they get. I remember you talking about age, where they get a certain age and they feel
Mhm.
like they're not enough because they don't
Yeah.
have a family. Like, where's the family? And so doing this helps you strip away some of this, all this extra stuff that people have
Yeah.
put on us
And a
to make
lot of
us feel.
women who I've had women who are older than me say that they were jealous that I'm in certain positions or blah blah blah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but these were someone told me your collection of yeses is how you got to where you are at that moment. So if
Yes.
you're envious of me, what did you say yes to that took away from actually what you wanted to do? Because sometimes we as women will say yes to appease other people, to meet other
Yes.
people's expectations. And especially if you're running a business, you have to be extremely, extremely careful about the collection of yeses you agreed to because
Yes,
it could
Lord.
take your business off course.
I had to learn that too, just not showing up. So this is kind of like my last one, which is really my favorite one. And you were talking about kind of rebuilding your relationship or enhancing your relationship with Bible reading. So here, yeah, you probably can't see it, but it's basically a sun that's drawn. So instead of writing out full paragraphs, these are my go-to Bible verses. So with my
Okay.
intentional journaling, when I'm experiencing things, or like typically when you were saying, that, depression is a thing for you, instead of always writing out a feelings journal, which is good. What I did was, for me, I needed more confidence in an area because I was struggling with where God was taking me
Hmm.
and who I used to be, which was really comfortable, I guess, because like you, I had been in education for 13 years. I knew I was gonna get paid on the second and the fourth, and
Uh-huh. Every other Wednesday,
mortgage,
like,
my mortgage was coming out. We was pretty comfortable, and so there was this fear. Like, it seemed like my personal life, everything was changing. I was having to, put my house up for rent, and everything was changing for me, and it was scary. And so I had to really like go back to my faith. So this intentional journaling really helped me out because I drew a sun, because it reminded me of the verse, for who the sun sets free, he is truly free indeed. And I needed to free myself from what I thought life was supposed to be at 37 to go into where God was taking me. And that was the most scariest thing, because
yeah.
everything that I looked for was no longer there. So I had to create a new normal, whatever that looks like.
Ooh, a lot of people have had to create new normals
Yeah,
recently. And you're right, it is scary because we've been ingrained with this is the way you're supposed to go to college, get married, have kids. Like
right.
everybody has this whole thing, and I don't want kids. I have made that very clear. I've written a blog post on it.
And
My
that's
mama my
okay.
mama has accepted it. Like everybody in my life is very aware of that. And so people are like, well, are you sure? And I'm like, if I do plan on having kids, they will be adopted. Like I'm not carrying, I'm not giving birth. I don't see myself
Yeah.
doing that. I don't even like menstrual cramps. I know that's TMI, but so you
No,
think I'm gonna go ahead and give birth? No. Like
look, I'm a therapist. There's no judgment. I'm pretty open.
yeah, I'm like, no. So um,
Yeah.
definitely, and I'll have all of Stephanie's information in the show notes on the blog to go to her journaling class and stuff like that because journaling works. Like I had always been a writer, so I'd always journal. But when I created the Truth Confidant, that didn't do well. As I was building that and teaching other people different journaling techniques and reasons you can use journaling and different ways you can use journaling, I was actually equipping myself with skills
Yeah.
that have been so beneficial. Because, like I said, I haven't cussed out anybody in 2019. I'm very proud of myself. At this recorded, it is August 6th. So that means in the first 7 months, no, now don't think people haven't tried it, but I have been able to be like, okay, you know what?
You're
God
always going to
saved
be
you.
tested when you are changing and evolving. You are always going to
Yeah.
be tested, and
I'm
I had
like,
to learn
God
that.
saves you.
Expect the challenge, accept the challenge. That's where
Excuse me.
we're at. Like,
Absolutely. And so, I know Stephanie does self-care. And the reason I did that one podcast episode, Self-Care Will Not Save You, is because at that time, everybody kept saying, take an international trip, take a bath salt. It was go get a mani and a pedi. It was very aesthetic.
yeah,
The self-care that was being pushed at the time was very aesthetic. And as I was learning more with creating the journals and teaching people about journaling, I realized that's not the self-care at all. That's pampering.
right,
That's actually self-pampering. Self-care is what Stephanie has been saying, doing the inner work. For me,
yeah,
my self-care included reading the Bible, taken time to myself. Like my life coach asks in one of my homework assignments, what brings you joy? I couldn't answer that. So that meant I had to go
yeah,
on a quest to find out what brings me joy. To me, that's self-care because now I'm learning more about myself. Like Stephanie said earlier, sometimes we may not be sure who we are, and we're just doing things and then we go recharge and then we do other things. But during that time, did we ever sit down and try to figure out who are we? What do
right,
we like to do? What is it that brings us joy or interest? And honestly, I didn't know who I was. I knew who I could be to everyone else.
right.
I
And so
knew,
that, oh,
yes.
you go ahead.
No, I was going to say I knew what I could do for everyone else, but I didn't
Mhm.
know who Vernetta was. Like,
Yeah,
I like the Dallas Mavericks. I like Netflix. I like chocolate. I love my nephews. That was it. That was the extent of who I was. And I was like, I know it
yeah,
has to be more to me than just that, even though those are great things, great things to have. But
yeah.
this
So
year
that's
I'm
kind of like
learning.
your surface list, and that's good.
Hmm.
I always tell people when I consult or when I do self-care sessions, um, the question is, how do you care for yourself? And so
Mm,
when we're sitting in these groups of women who are, just from different walks of life, they always go to, like you said, what you do or who you are to someone else. So let's come back to the question. How do you care for you? And one of the things that's always like my beginning sentence kind of as we start these sessions is, when did it get to a point where we got so busy that we had to teach people how to care for themselves or remind you to take care of yourself? And so one of the exercises is that I have them close their eyes and think back to a time when, and most people go back to their childhood. They're going back, think back to a time when you did something for you that was not attached to anyone else. You were not someone's mom. You were not someone's daughter. You were not an employee. You were just you. And I have people say their names because we become everything to everybody else. We sometimes, and this was crazy because point I forgot my name. like my name
wow.
is Stephanie. Yeah, like because you would hear people that are like Miss Davis, and I would turn around. But if you call me Stephanie in the grocery store, I wouldn't. Who's that? Like, I was waiting on a mama or a Aunt Cookie. Like, that's my niece and nephew called me. Or a Miss Davis because we have been in education so long. But if
Yeah.
you call me by my name, I wouldn't know who you were talking to.
Well, I
And
was
then,
shocked the first time one of my coworkers called me by my first name because if you're in
yes,
elementary, we always say Miss or Mister because the kids, so we don't want
yeah.
them to know the first name. And I was at a workshop and someone called me by my first name, and I looked. I was like, oh, okay, we're on that level of
And yeah,
okay.
it's almost like you kind of get offended, or you kind of like, "Whoa, you really saw me? Like you
Yes,
know me."
it does
And
take
so,
you a minute to kind of
yeah, like
okay, okay.
my name is Stephanie. But yeah, and so my self-care sessions are different from the traditional self-care because I feel like, the market already has that on lock, wants you to buy stuff, but self-care is simplistic. It is a simple
Mhm.
moment that teach you to care for yourself. It's not meant for you. That's something extra. And so what I teach women to do is look at, they peg me like the energy strategist. I don't know if I've coined that yet, but basically we teach women how to allocate their energy throughout the day. And so in that day, we look and we say, okay, so how can you implement self-care? Obviously, for someone who has a newborn and someone who has a teenager, your self-care might look different. We start off with really kind of doing a group activity, and that's that four squares which I showed you. But we look at the four different components of our lives where we feel that we are experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue, or we're just completely overwhelmed, and we try to pull out time, even if it's just a 10-minute walk. If that's all you got for the morning time,
Mhm.
roll with it. I mean, something. Don't give yourself something. The time that you spend in the car while you're commuting and the kids are in the backseat sleep, take Baby Shark Shark off and put you some soothing music on. I mean, you gotta learn how to work with what you got, because we're all busy, so we
So
can't.
time management in a
Yeah, we
sense.
can't keep
Mhm.
using that as an excuse. Time management, resource management. I mean, energy comes in all different forms, and so we also teach that. Like some people say, "Well, I'm just so tired." Okay, well, let's look at what is your tired? Because are
They
you
probably
physically?
tired from thinking. I know that
Exactly. Are
that
you?
wore me out.
That is true. So are you mentally? And so then we talk about the different types of energy. So these self-care
Mhm.
classes are a detox in a way, but it's more like an educational piece to really help you understand yourself and what you are saying to yourself and how you can fix that. Because a lot of times we'll say we're tired. Well, are you physically tired? Are you emotionally tired? Are you mentally tired? Some people be like, baby, I'm both. And some people, like, when you start talking to them, it's like, no, I'm just really emotionally drained. I've had a lot going on. And I mean, this is my therapy. I feel like therapy is a part of self care. So, one of the things that I don't do is push therapy down someone's throat. First of all, I work with youth and young adults, but self care has really helped with parenting so that when I get their kids, they're going back to some happy moms, or at
Yep.
least relaxed moms. And so we all know that environment and community is so important. So if I can ask you, what do you need to be okay? Because you actually helping me make my job a lot better. So what do you need to be okay? Like, I mean, I might not be able to donate physical energy to you or financial energy to you, but what is it that I can give you to give you a break so that your kid, and that's one of the things how we think of, I know this might sound corny, but like the circle of life. Children take in the emotions and the feelings of their parents, especially when you work, well, really with any child, but with young men, if they feel like their moms are not happy or going through some things, that kind of funnels itself through anger. So when I'm talking to a kid, the parent might think, oh, well, they're just whatever, but they're really worried about you. And that's why they're acting out that way, or that's why they're fearful of leaving, or that's why they're having behavior problems.
Because they can't
So,
verbalize what it is. Like
right.
they know it's something not right going on, but they just
Yeah.
don't know how to. Yeah, because I've had stomach problems my whole life, and I just kept thinking it was nerves. I was like, well, maybe I'm just a nervous person, or maybe I'm not eating right. Now, mind you, I was an athlete
Right.
from third grade all the way through high school. So it wasn't like I didn't eat right. My both of my parents were athletes. My father was an athlete in college, so we knew how to eat right. So I was like, it
Right.
wasn't that, we didn't get to eat out a lot and stuff like that. Um, but this year, I haven't had those problems, and I realized that my stomach issues were more of a spiritual. a manifestation of what was going on spiritually in my
Right.
life. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the patterns, when I started realizing the patterns and the time of the year. And so I'm just like, that could be a whole nother podcast about
Yeah.
understanding, how the spiritual world can manifest into the physical world. But you're right, as a child, I didn't know that, and I just kept thinking, well, maybe I'm just always going to be sick, and maybe I'm always going to be sad, and maybe I'm always going to be tired, and then I just grew up and I was just like, well, that's just the way it is. I'm just going to push through and,
Yeah.
do what I got to do. And yeah, it can really take a toll on your health, because what you don't want to do is end up laying on the floor at your job
Right.
or at the grocery store, freaking people out because they don't know what happened to you. Like, you're a perfectly healthy person. They were just talking to the day before, and now you sitting here laying on the floor and nobody knows why.
Yeah, and a lot of what people don't understand is that burnout is a progression. It's just not like you end up just whoop, like you saying, falling out in the grocery store. This is a progression of you not caring for yourself. This is
Mm,
a progression of you not pouring back into yourself. It's almost like, and I use the example when I'm teaching these classes. If your cell phone was at 20%, what do? We typically start panicking, looking around, like saying, hey, are you Android or Apple? And trying to get recharged.
yeah,
So we owe our own selves the courtesy to say, hey, I'm getting a little low here. And I also teach that too. So with self-care, or do you feel like, let's look at kind of I call it checking the temperature. Where are you? Are you at 100% today? Are you feeling 80, 70? I mean, what is it looking like for you? What do you need to at least, okay, realistically, we're not going to always be at 100% every day. So that's one thing about me. I'm not the type of person that paints fairy tales. Like, no,
hmm
okay, I legit know everybody's not going to be on 100 all day, every day. You
that's
might have,
exhausting.
and then I'm concerned then.
Yeah,
Like,
like, what
yeah,
you taking?
yeah, because that's gonna crash and burn real quick. But you might be at 100%, and then we also with intentional journaling, we do a mood tracker. So if you're one of those people, you can't kind of figure out, well, why is it that I'm always feeling down, and I go over what depression is, but I don't diagnose it like right there. You need
Yeah.
to speak therapist for that. But just to tell you, okay, this is what, according to the DSM-5, this is what depression looks like. So then you can have that information to say, okay, well, maybe that's something I need to check. So then I'll say, okay, well, for your journaling, maybe you could try a mood tracker. So track it for the next 6 weeks. If you notice that, I don't know, during lunchtime or typically during the middle of the week, you are maybe at like 80%. And on Mondays, you're at 50 for whatever reason. Well, what's happening between your weekend and you where you can't work Mondays? And then so
And we
that's
can't just say it's the job. We can't.
yeah. Like, what are you doing with yourself? So where is it that you're not caring for yourself to where you are unhappy Monday, and then you build some momentum Wednesday, and then Friday you're like up here? So intentional journaling actually helps with that part of self-care, because you're able to really look and reflect and say, okay, maybe I need to delegate some other tasks on the weekend to where I'm not so tired going back to work.
Yeah.
And then the question is, well, I don't have nobody that I can really talk to. My parents don't live here, or I don't, Okay, so I know it's friends. I know you have friends.
Yeah.
And so then we start really kind of looking at what resources do you have, or if your kids are older, give them more responsibility. Like, I give my daughter responsibility. She's 16. You should be able to clean the whole house by yourself. So just learning to delegate is a part of that self-care too. So that's what I do.
And that's a good way to end this conversation because, well, number one, you got to come to Get Me Paid because, Stephanie will be there. She'll be able to talk to you. You'll be able to learn more, get to know her, and, sign up for one of her classes or sign up for a one-on-one or something, because it's 2019. We can't continue to live in a world of denial. Like, oh, I can make it. I just need to get through this week, and then I'm gonna do this. Like, no. I know people, like, you say it all the time. I'm saying it because I'm warning you. You do not want to end up on the floor, okay? Because the floor is nasty. It is nasty. It really is. People be walking on it and you don't know what else they do on it. But you shouldn't end up like that. I shouldn't have ended up like that. We have to tap into sources and resources like Stephanie, who have the skills, who have the tools, who have the strategies, and they can teach and they can help us with that. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, it can be isolating, it can be lonely. I know some people are saying they can go days without leaving the house, they can go days without talking to anyone, and outside of social media and stuff like that. And I'm cool with that. Like, it does not make me sad.
Balance.
However, I know for some people it takes a negative toll when you
Yeah.
don't have that human interaction. I'm good with like one, maybe 2 times a week I can interact with other people. The rest, I'm good by myself. But that's the type of introvert I am. And that was something I had to learn, you know.
Yeah.
I had to learn, like, Stephanie was saying about the energy. I had to learn what brings me energy, what doesn't bring me energy. And I had to learn who I am. I'm still learning, who I am, because right now I feel like I'm shedding skin like a snake, or, transforming from a caterpillar to a butterfly. It is like I'm in a process. So I know right now it's not the final version of me. Right now it's not the something I could say, yeah, this is who I am. I'm like, no, I'm evolving. Like, this is what you're getting
Yeah.
right now. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You may not like this version. That is cool. If you stick it out, you may like the next version. If you don't stick it out, I wish you well. Like, I'm not even going to try to tell people, just wait till I finish. I don't know how
Yeah.
long God going to take. I really don't. I've 35 years of being who I thought I was supposed to be. That's a lot of unlearning and a lot of
Yeah.
redoing it and all of that and all of that stuff. But you
And
can
that's
learn that.
okay though.
Oh no, yeah, I'm fine with that.
I think other people don't see that, and not that it matters, but I just think when you're doing your own hard work, that
Mhm.
you're growing better every day, and I just wish that people would give themselves more credit and more space to do that.
Hold on, let me get on Instagram real quick, because there was something right before we recorded that I saw on Instagram, and I really hope I can find it real quick. And it definitely is going to sum up what we just talked about before we get to the final toast. Here we go. Oh, not all hustle is heard. Sometimes it's just you, all alone, grinding, elevating, evolving, while no one hears a sound. That is
Yes.
actual hard work.
Yay.
So we're going to get ready for the final toast. Okay, Stephanie, what is your takeaway from this episode?
Breathe. It's okay. I think because a lot of times we and I say intentionally breathe. Like, life is
Mhm.
simple. Breathe deeply. That's my takeaway. We're so busy hustling and bustling that we don't take time to really just inhale, exhale, just breathe. We're gonna be okay.
I agree, because sometimes just paying attention to breathing can let you know how much you really got going on in your mind.
Yeah.
My final toast is, and I try not to complicate things, you guys know I do, but the way my mind works, I like a lot of what Stephanie shared in this episode. I know we didn't dive deep into, like, quote unquote entrepreneurship, but she gave so much good stuff on what you can do as an entrepreneur to really stop and tune into who you are. That's going to be my takeaway, is to tune in to who you are. And if that means you got to figure that out, then you got to figure that out. This has been a Toast of Truth with me, Vernetta Arfreni, and my guest co-host, Stephanie Davis. And this episode, this is season 9, episode 6, We talked about blooming beyond that burnout, and we talked about the consequences and some things we've done to get past that burnout. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.
Go to vernettaarfree.com for the show notes. Make sure you go to vernettaarfree.com /category /podcast.